I have to believe that I am. I've been given this opportunity. I worked for the opportunity, and I have to take advantage of what I have.
August 10th, 2026. New York is already beginning to feel the pressure of the US Open. The main draw is still 2 weeks away, but Flushing Meadows is waking up early. Sponsor crews are moving through the grounds, hospitality structures are rising, cameras are preparing, and the entire tennis world is beginning to turn its attention toward the biggest hardcourt stage in America. For Alex Eala, this should have been a simple moment of preparation. Focus on the next tournament. Focus on the ranking. Focus on surviving the noise that comes with becoming one of the fastest rising names in women's tennis. But then, before a single ball had been struck at the US Open, something happened that may have said more about where Eala's career is heading than any result she could produce in New York. A press release arrived from Marriott's Asia-Pacific operation. There was no confirmed multi-million-dollar figure attached to it. No dramatic announcement of a contract length. No extravagant list of private jets, unlimited flights, or luxury perks. Instead, the message was much more interesting. Alex Eala had been chosen as the face of Marriott Bonvoy's Tennis the World campaign across Asia-Pacific, excluding China. And that timing was the real shock. Because in modern sports, major brands usually wait. They wait for the trophy. They wait for the Grand Slam breakthrough. They wait for the viral highlight, the championship speech, the explosion of headlines, and then they arrive with the contracts. That is how the game normally works. The athlete creates the moment the market reacts, and the sponsors rush in after the price has already gone up. Marriott did not wait. They moved before the US Open. They moved when Eala was 20 years old, ranked around world number 20 according to the story provided, and standing at a point in her career where her future was still being written. And that changes the entire way this deal should be viewed. This is not simply a story about a famous athlete getting another sponsor. It is a story about a global company making an early decision. It is about timing. It is about geography. It is about market strategy. And most importantly, it is about what Marriott may believe Alex Eala can become long after the headlines from one tournament have disappeared. The first thing to understand is that the value of a sports partnership is not always hidden inside the dollar amount. Sometimes the most revealing part is the exact moment a company decides to sign. Contract numbers can be negotiated. Contract lengths can be structured. Benefits can remain private, but timing cannot be hidden. Timing is a decision, and every major company understands the risk attached to that decision. Marriott could have waited until the US Open was over. If Eala made a deep run, they could have attached themselves to the momentum. If she lost early, they could have avoided the risk. Instead, they moved before either outcome was known. That is what makes this interesting. They were not buying the result of a tournament that had already happened. They were buying into the possibility of everything that could happen next. And to understand why that matters, you have to look at the speed of Eala's rise. Only a short time earlier, she was still being viewed primarily as a promising young player from the Philippines, a product of the Rafa Nadal Academy with enormous potential, but still searching for the breakthrough that could transform potential into global relevance. Then, the momentum began to accelerate. The script describes a dramatic Wimbledon victory over Iga Swiatek, followed by an extraordinary run at the DC Open, where Eala defeated major names including Jessica Pegula, Alina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka on the way to a historic first WTA singles title. The ranking rise followed, pushing her into the world's top 20 and, according to the source story, to the highest ranking ever achieved by a Filipino player. Suddenly, Alex Eala was no longer simply a player with potential. She had become a player with evidence. Evidence that she could beat elite opponents. Evidence that she could handle major stages. Evidence that her audience was growing far beyond the Philippines. And that last part may be the key to everything, because Marriott did not announce her as the face of a campaign built around New York. The campaign was centered on Asia-Pacific, excluding China, with a major connection to the Australian Open and Marriott Bonvoy's loyalty ecosystem. At first, that might sound like an unusual combination. Why sign a player in the middle of her US Open build-up to promote a strategy focused on another part of the world and a tournament months into the future? But when you step back, the picture begins to change. Alex Eala is not only a tennis player, she is a connection point. She represents the Philippines, but her story travels far beyond the Philippines. Her fan base reaches across Southeast Asia. Her background connects her to the international nature of modern tennis. Her development at the Rafa Nadal Academy gave her a global sporting identity. And her rise has created something brands are constantly searching for: an athlete who can feel local and international at exactly the same time. That combination is incredibly difficult to manufacture. A brand can buy advertising, it can buy television coverage, it can hire celebrities, but authenticity cannot simply be purchased with a marketing budget. Eala's connection to her audience was built long before Marriott entered the picture. Filipino fans did not suddenly discover her because a global hotel company put her in a campaign. The attention was already there. The flags were already appearing. The crowds were already responding. The excitement around her matches had already begun creating a pattern that major companies could measure. And once a company can measure attention, attention becomes strategy. That is where this story becomes much bigger than a normal endorsement announcement. Marriott's campaign is not simply asking people to look at Alex Eala and remember a logo. The structure described in the source points towards something broader, connecting Eala's growing visibility with Marriott Bonvoy's membership experience, including access and experiences connected to the Australian Open. That means the athlete is not necessarily the final destination. The relationship between the fan and the brand is. And that is a fundamentally different model from the old-fashioned sponsorship story. In the old model, an athlete wins and a brand places its name beside the victory. In this model, the athlete becomes part of the journey that brings fans into a larger ecosystem. Tennis becomes the doorway, travel becomes the experience, membership becomes the relationship, and Alex Eala becomes the person standing at the entrance. That is why the decision to sign her early could be so significant. Marriott is not necessarily betting on whether she wins the next Grand Slam. They are betting on whether people will continue to care about where her story goes. There is a huge difference. Winning one tournament can create a spike. Building a connection with millions of people can create a long-term market. And Eala may be uniquely positioned to do that. She comes from a country with enormous passion for sport and a global diaspora. She represents a region where international travel, loyalty programs, entertainment, and sports are increasingly connected. She plays a sport that naturally moves across continents. 1 month, tennis is in Europe. The next, North America. Then Asia. Then Australia. The sport itself creates a constant connection between competition and travel. For a company built around hotels, destinations, and loyalty, tennis is not just entertainment. It is a traveling global platform. And within that platform, Marriott appears to have identified Eala as someone capable of carrying a message across markets that matter to its Asia-Pacific strategy. The exclusion of China, which might initially look strange, becomes easier to understand when viewed through the exact regional structure described in the campaign. Companies do not always define markets according to the size of a map. They define them according to how their businesses are organized, where their research is focused, and where their growth opportunities exist. The important point is not simply that China was excluded. The important point is that the same regional language appears central to the campaign strategy and the audience Marriott is trying to reach. That suggests this was not a random celebrity signing. It was targeted, and targeted deals often reveal more about how a company sees an athlete than flashy contract numbers ever could. There is another reason the timing matters. Sports history is full of athletes whose commercial value exploded after one extraordinary tournament. Emma Raducanu's US Open victory in 2021 remains one of the most famous examples. She became a global phenomenon almost overnight, and the sponsorship market moved rapidly. Major brands wanted to be associated with one of the most remarkable stories tennis had ever seen. But the problem with signing athletes at the absolute peak of a meteor explosion is obvious. Everyone is paying after the market has already changed. Expectations become enormous. Every loss becomes a headline. Every ranking drop becomes a question about whether the commercial machine moved too quickly. Marriott's decision, as framed in the source material, looks different. Eala had already established momentum, but she had not yet reached the point where every possible future achievement had been priced into her commercial value. She was rising, but still rising. And for a company, that can be the most attractive moment to enter. You are not paying for a finished story. You are becoming part of the story while it is still developing. That does not mean the bet is guaranteed to succeed. Tennis offers no guarantees. Rankings change. Injuries happen. Young players go through difficult seasons. The pressure of representing an entire nation can become enormous. One month can make a player look unstoppable, the next can expose every weakness. Eala will lose matches. She will face players who have more experience. She will encounter moments when the expectations surrounding her are heavier than the tennis ball coming toward her. That is the reality of elite sport. But perhaps that is exactly why this deal deserves attention. Marriott did not wait for certainty, because certainty does not exist in tennis. They made a decision based on trajectory, and trajectory is often more valuable than a single result. Think about what companies are actually trying to predict when they sign a young athlete. They are not just asking, can this player win tomorrow? They are asking, will people still be watching in 3 years? Will the athlete remain relevant if the ranking moves from 20 to 12 or from 12 to 35? Can the person's identity survive beyond one tournament? Can they connect with audiences that the company wants to reach? Can they represent something bigger than the sport itself? Alex Eala's answer to those questions may be the reason this partnership happened now instead of later. The story has already shown that her value cannot be measured entirely through her ranking. A ranking tells you where a player stands on a list. It does not tell you how many people care when she plays. It does not tell you how quickly tickets move when her name appears on a schedule. It does not measure the emotional connection between an athlete and a country. It does not capture the power of seeing Filipino flags in stadiums far from Manila. And it certainly does not measure what happens when a young athlete becomes a symbol of possibility for an audience that has rarely seen someone from their country reach this level in the sport. That is where the commercial story becomes emotional. Alex Eala is not selling Marriott rooms. She is not responsible for running a loyalty program. What she brings is attention, identification, and aspiration. A fan watches her play and imagines following her journey. That journey leads to cities, tournaments, airports, hotels, and experiences. Marriott understands that if the journey becomes meaningful enough, people want to be part of it. And that is why the Australian Open connection matters. Australia is not just another tournament on the calendar. For many fans across Asia Pacific, it is one of the most geographically accessible Grand Slam events, and it sits naturally inside a travel conversation. Marriott Bonvoy's ability to connect tennis access with loyalty experiences creates a bridge between watching a player and physically participating in the event surrounding that player. That is powerful marketing because it moves beyond passive viewing. Instead of simply seeing Alex Eala in an advertisement, a fan could potentially imagine a path from following her online to traveling to watch her play. The athlete creates the emotional spark. The brand builds the experience around it. And suddenly the partnership becomes something much more sophisticated than a photograph and a logo. The source material also makes an important point about the rumors surrounding the value of the deal. Numbers have circulated online, but the exact contract value described in the script is not publicly confirmed. That matters. In sports media, the biggest number often becomes the easiest headline. Millions of dollars. Private flights, luxury benefits, secret bonuses. Those stories spread because they are simple and dramatic, but the absence of a confirmed figure should not be treated as a weakness in the story. In many ways, it forces us to focus on the more important evidence. We know when Marriott announced the partnership. We know the region attached to the campaign. We know that Eala was positioned as a face of tennis the world. We know that the strategy includes Marriott Bonvoy experiences and Australian Open access for members. Those are tangible parts of the structure. And together, they suggest a partnership built around long-term audience connection rather than a one-week victory lap. The biggest shock, then, is not necessarily that Marriott signed Alex Eala. Given her rise, her fan base, and her historic importance to Philippine tennis, another major partnership was always likely to come. The real shock is that Marriott decided not to wait for the obvious moment. They did not wait for a US Open miracle. They did not wait for another trophy. They did not wait for the perfect headline. They moved while the story was still uncertain. And in business, uncertainty is where the biggest bets are made. That decision also sends a message to the rest of the commercial market. Once a major global brand identifies an athlete as strategically valuable, other companies begin paying closer attention. Airlines may look, financial brands may look, fashion companies may look, technology companies may look, not because Marriott tells them to, but because the existence of one major partnership changes the conversation around market value. Suddenly, Eala is not just being discussed as a rising player. She is being evaluated as a platform. and platforms attract competition. The next brand interested in her will not be negotiating in the same environment that existed before August 2026. Marriott's decision becomes part of the market history around her. It establishes a level of confidence. It tells other companies that someone has already looked at the numbers, the audience, the geography, and the future, and decided that Alex Eala is worth investing in now. That does not mean every future deal will be massive. It does not mean every prediction will come true. But it does mean the conversation around her has changed. She has entered a different room. Not just the locker room, not just the trophy room, the boardroom, the kind of room where executives look at regions, demographics, loyalty behavior, audience growth, and long-term commercial strategy. And somewhere in that conversation, Alex Eala's name now belongs. That may be one of the most significant developments of her career so far. Because trophies are won and defended, rankings rise and fall. But when an athlete successfully becomes bigger than the weekly results, the career changes. Naomi Osaka experienced it. Coco Gauff experienced it. Other global stars have experienced it in different ways. Their athletic success opened the door, but their ability to connect with audiences kept the door open. Eala is now approaching that same kind of crossroads. The tennis must continue to come first. Nothing can replace results. She still has to train. She still has to improve her serve, handle pressure, survive long matches, and solve the tactical problems presented by the best players in the world. No marketing campaign can hit a backhand down the line at 5-all in the third set. No sponsor can win a tiebreak for her. The court remains the ultimate truth. But what happens away from the court can shape the scale of the opportunity if the results continue. And right now, Marriott appears to be betting that the opportunity will continue to grow. Maybe that is the simplest way to understand this entire story. Marriott did not sign Alex Eala because they know exactly what she will do at the US Open, the Australian Open, or any other tournament. Nobody knows that. They signed her because they believe the question of what Alex Eala does next will continue to matter. They believe people will watch. They believe people will travel. They believe her connection to Asia Pacific can become part of a much larger conversation. And they decided to make that bet before the next chapter was written. That is why the timing is more important than the rumored money. That is why the regional focus matters. That is why the Australian Open connection matters. And that is why this may turn out to be much more than another sponsorship announcement. 10 years from now, people may look back at this moment and see it as one of those quiet turning points that did not seem enormous at first. There was no Grand Slam trophy being lifted, no confetti falling around a stadium, no dramatic final that forced the entire sports world to stop. There was simply a press release, a young Filipino tennis star, and a global company deciding that waiting was no longer necessary. That is the bet. And now comes the part no press release can control. Alex Eala has to keep playing. She has to keep growing. She has to handle the attention that comes with being the face of a movement much larger than one tournament. She will face setbacks, difficult draws, losses, criticism, and the relentless pressure that comes when millions of people begin expecting history every time you walk onto a tennis court. But she has already reached a point where every next victory could mean more than another number beside her name. Every major result could strengthen a global identity that is beginning to take shape. And every time she walks into a stadium far from the Philippines and sees the flags, hears the noise, and feels the expectation, she will be reminded that the journey is no longer hers alone. Marriott saw that journey. They saw it before the US Open. They saw it before the next trophy. They saw it while uncertainty was still part of the story. And they decided to move anyway. In the end, that may be the strongest signal of all. Not the rumored contract value, not the luxury speculation, not the headlines. The signal is that a company operating on a global scale looked at Alex Eala, looked at the region she represents, looked at the audience growing around her, and decided that the future was worth entering early. Now the tennis world waits to see whether that decision becomes the beginning of an even bigger era. Because if Alex Eala continues to rise, Marriott may not be remembered as the company that signed another promising tennis player. It may be remembered as one of the first global giants that understood exactly what was happening before everyone else did. And that is the real story. Not how much she was paid, not what perks were included. The real story is who decided to believe first, who decided not to wait, and how one 20-year-old Filipino tennis player may be turning a breakthrough season into something far bigger than tennis.